Hello everybody, here we are today doing a first round series review between the Florida Panthers and the Tampa Bay Lightning. So before we get started with it, please make sure to subscribe if you're new to me or hockey, whatever the case may be. That being said, let's get on into it. So in Game 1, the Panthers are playing host to the Tampa Bay Lightning, and it is Sam Reinhart, the guy that finished second overall in goals for the regular season, to kick off the series with a goal for the Panthers. Brendan Hagel would score a goal for the Tampa Bay Lightning as well in the first period, and it's 1-1 after 20 minutes of play. No goals in the second means that it's 1-1 entering the third. Plenty of action in this final frame. And luckily for the Panthers, Carter Verhaeghe scores a man advantage goal in the opening minute of the period as they take a 2-1 lead. A while later, you would see Matthew Tkachuk get an empty net goal to make it 3-1 as they have a 2-goal cushion. However, Steven Stamkos with about 10 seconds left says, no, this game is not over, and scores a goal to make it 3-2. But unfortunately for the Lightning, it would be the Panthers that would go on to win this game 3-2, and you would see the Bolts feel a little frustrated. Stamkos had a multi-point night. Vasilevsky had a good game, but the Cats end up winning here, getting their first series lead against the Tampa Bay Lightning in their playoff matchup history. And this was the first home win in Game 1 for the Panthers since 1997, I believe, if I read that correctly. So Game 2 is, of course, a game the Lightning would want to be able to get back, and they played Game 1 not terribly and still lost, hoping to see a little bit of momentum going their way, but it would be Sam Bennett that would score a goal early in this game to give the Panthers a 1-0 lead. Then you would see Vladimir Tarasenko, a guy that they brought over, of course the Panthers that is, and he scores a goal for them to make it 2-0 about 10 minutes later after the Bennett goal as they have that 2-goal lead. And this is a period where they outshoot the Lightning 13-3, but I gotta be honest here, they had a good amount of power play time in that span. So the Panthers seemingly being able to get out to an early lead and a little bit happy. However, it is Braden Point that gets a goal about a minute into the second period to make it a 2-1 game. And then who else would it be? Yeah, Steven Stamkos about 4 minutes later gets a power play goal to make it 2-0 in this one after 20 minutes of play. And unfortunately for the Panthers, not only do they see their 2-0 lead slip away after the second period, but this was also a period where you would see Sam Bennett get hurt. Then in the third, you would see both teams be able to get some time on the man advantage. However, neither one is able to score. So guess what? It's 2-2 after 60 minutes, which means we get overtime. And in overtime, it was the Panthers that outshot the Lightning 3-0 in that span. And who else would it be but Carter Verhaeghe? I believe he is just the 6th player in NHL history to have 5 overtime winners in playoff history, and that spans, of course, his career, and something that, of course, is really cool to see considering there's been multiple with the Panthers. Looking at this, too, you see the Tampa Bay Lightning where they get to see their stars have decent games, especially a guy like Stamkos is able to have a pretty good series overall with points and things like that, and Andrei Vasilevsky have a .944 save percentage before allowing the final goal. However, after not getting obliterated in the first 2 games, they are still down 2-0, heading back to Tampa. So in Game 3, both teams looking to take advantage of that critical game, and the Panthers would be without Sam Bennett, as he wouldn't play actually for the rest of the series, if I remember that correctly, because of a hand injury. Doesn't matter though, as Matthew Tkachuk is able to get on the board for the Panthers first, as they are going up 1-0 after the first period. But in the second period, you would see Steven Stamkos for a 3rd straight game score a goal to make it a 1-1 game. But then a little bit later, it'd be Tyler Mott who ends up scoring a goal. He didn't have many this season. I believe he had 6. I'll check my notes just to make sure. Yes, he had 6. And on top of that, this gave the Bolts their first lead of the series. Problem is, about 7 minutes later, Sam Reinhart scores a goal to make it 2-2. And then Brandon Montour scores a goal to make it 3-2 to regain the lead for the Panthers as into the final frame. It's once again the Panthers being in a good spot to win. And then in the third period, it would be Steven Lawrence who would score a goal for the Florida Panthers. Kind of interesting because of the fact he just had 3 on the course of the season. He gets a point though, and it is part of a period for the Panthers where they were able to get a 4-2 lead before you would see Nick Paul, a guy that signed a long-term extension not that long ago for the Lightning, make it a 4-3 game. It's all right because, hey, guess what? There's a chance you can come back and keep it close like they've been able to do during the series. But it is Matthew Tkachuk with an empty net goal to wrap this thing up 5-3 as the Panthers take a pivotal 3-0 lead in the series, talking about maybe there being a sweep in Game 4. Also, I do want to highlight for Game 3, it was a little bit frustrating for the Lightning as they went 0-4 on the man advantage. Florida wasn't able to get on the power play in this game. Still though, for the Lightning, they had the league's best power play percentage in the NHL during the course of the regular season. They were hoping to be able to get that. Would have been a really good time to score in a game like this. But again, pushing on to Game 4. So Game 4 could potentially be a game that has a lot of emotion tied to it, as you don't want to get swept by your in-state rival, something that I think is more true in recent years with the playoff familiarity with these two teams. And this could also be Steven Stamkos' last game in front of the crowd, as of course his contract is up after this year. And the Lightning need to get out to an early start. That's something that they're able to do in the first, as they get a Stamkos power play goal, a fourth straight game with a goal, mind you. They get a Hagel shorthanded goal, and then they get a Braden Point goal to make it 3-0 in the span of about 6 minutes. And after the first period, they are up, and you're feeling like, man, they can really win this game comfortably. Then in the second period, you would see Carter Verhaeghe help his team get on the board, as it is now 3-1. Hagel would score a goal to make it 4-1, and again, the Lightning fans are probably feeling pretty good, but Sam Reinhart scores a power play goal to make it 4-2 before Oliver Ekman-Larsson scores a goal as well. Not something that is totally in the norm compared to some of these other goal scorers. And they make it a 1-goal game in the final frame, as it goes from being 3-0 after the first 20 to 4-3 after the first 40. And who else would it be but Steven Stamkos in the third to be able to help his team get a little bit of a cushion back after losing some of that momentum in the second. And then Nick Paul would score his second of the series to help this team go on to win this game 5-3. Gonna be honest, this game was kind of crazy. I watched the second period in disbelief because I ended up going to take my dog out for a walk, but then was like, oh, let's go and get some food real quick. And I went to a place where Greek people probably would not be a fan of this, that are fans of authentic Greek food, but in the middle of the Midwest, you can only get a gyro in certain places. Went to a place that serves ice cream, just a little bit of everything. So I'm eating my Midwest gyro, watching the second period on my phone, talking to my wife, and just in disbelief that the Panthers almost come back, or seemingly are able to. But guess what? In the third period, as we're driving there and I've got the game on the radio, on my phone or whatever, they are able again for the Lightning to push this one to Game 5. So Game 5, of course, the Panthers are looking to win this at home, and early on the Lightning are thinking, let's get an early start like we saw in Game 4. However, it would be Carter Verhaeghe yet again to score 45 seconds into the game, and then a bit later it would be Alexander Barkov that would score a goal for them to make it 2-0, and that would be a shorthanded goal, mind you. Victor Hedman would score a goal in the first period too, so it's 2-1, and the Lightning aren't out of it yet again, as they don't really get blown out in this series. No goals in the second period, although you would see the Panthers outshoot the Lightning 23-12. You're thinking this could be the final period for the Bolts, and around the halfway point of the third is when the floodgates start to open. And unfortunately for the Lightning, it wasn't in their favor, as the goal scoring was done by the Panthers, as you would see Barkov, you would see Rodriguez score 2 goals to make it a 4-1 game. And then the empty netters start to come in, as you would see Verhaeghe again and Mikkola score to make it a 6-1 game, meaning they win the series 6-1 in the final game, and they win the series in 5. So the Panthers moving on in 4 victories in 5 games. And looking back at this series, there were a lot of things you could take away from it. One of those things were the fact that the Lightning maybe had some of their stars put up big numbers. Again, Stamkos was able to have a lot of goals in this series. However, they had 3 games where they scored 2 goals or less. That's going to be a huge factor here. And some of the guys that they brought in did not have a great series. Matt Tampa, I'm not really sure what they expected out of him. Not saying that he was, going to be this top-pairing defenseman that they think is going to be that 50-point guy again. I don't believe he had a point in the series, and his underlying numbers weren't incredible. There were some other guys that did have good underlying numbers, but they didn't have a lot of points. But looking at this, you're going to need more than just your star players to play well in this series, and we knew that. Another thing is, too, the Florida Panthers were able to not take as many penalties as they normally do, at least in terms of the minutes. They took a lot of penalties, especially games 3 through 5, but they had 0 majors for the entirety of this first-round matchup. I thought this could be a series where they get punished off of really dumb things like getting majors, but they're able to avoid that despite the fact that a lot of guys ended up going to the box. And despite the fact that Andrei Vasilevsky did start the series relatively well, the Panthers were just able to apply a lot more pressure, and they had moments where they were just going to be able to outchance. It's tough to say because I feel like a lot of this series had teams on the power play at different points, or you just had 4-on-4. One of those deals where you knew this series was going to have guys that were going to be spending time in the box. So there's that. But I also want to add, too, that if you're a Panthers fan, you're hoping that a guy like Bennett is going to be able to come back in the second round. It does seem like he's going to be. However, a hand injury is not really something that's fun to deal with. Although I will say there's players that have been able to battle through worse. So I'm imagining he's going to be back for round 2. So for the Tampa Bay Lightning, their season is unfortunately over, and they've been knocked out in the first round in back-to-back seasons for the first time since something like 2006 and 7, somewhere around there. And the last time that happened, I would have been really in the early parts of elementary school. Tough year. You knew they were going to have some troubles. They had Mikhail Sergachev come out and try to play towards the end of that series. Not something you want to be able to have to do. Having a guy that could be so big for you go and do that. I do think that unfortunately this is a huge blow to Lightning fans. More so the fact that you are losing to the Panthers for the first time in the in-state rivalry history with the lack of playoff appearances against each other. However, I got to be honest here, it feels more like the little brother was finally able to best the big brother. And as a big brother here, I got to be honest, that is the worst case scenario. Last year, my brother, who is a little bit younger than me, he's 18, I'm 24, he wanted to arm wrestle, and I was just barely able to beat him last year. I'd be afraid to arm wrestle him now. Now, granted, he is 6 inches taller than me and probably has a good 70 or 80 pounds on me, but you know what? That's fine because I wrestled in high school and he didn't, so I know that maybe he might be stronger than me, but I definitely could take him if we wrestled. But yeah, when you're the big brother, you don't want that younger brother to think that they just run the roost, or they rule the roost, if you will. So a tough day for the Lightning fans as they were going from championships to seeing a team like the Panthers knock them out in the first round. A good team, mind you, and just kind of more signaling maybe the end of an era for the Lightning. As for the Panthers, things go on as they're able to move on to the second round for the third straight season. It's kind of a big deal because they had never done so in franchise history. This is a team that a few years ago was not able to make it to the playoffs regularly, that was not able to win in the playoffs if they were able to do it, didn't have a lot of great seasons. You know, they weren't always the most exciting team, but in recent years, they've become one of the more fun teams in the league to watch. I already said going into this series, they're not a fun team to play against. They've been able to have success with multiple different coaches. They've been able to win in the playoffs. They are the defending Eastern Conference champions, and they are looking to maybe get that first championship as this team is motivated and just took care of business against their rival. So we will see what happens here. What are your thoughts on this series? Who do you think will be able to win the Stanley Cup? And do you think that the Panthers are going to be that team? Let me know your thoughts down below in the comments. Also, please make sure to like this video if you enjoyed it. Subscribe if you're new. Everybody stay safe. Have a great night. And you go with hockey, all right. Goodbye, Brigadiers and Brigadettes. This is your captain signing off. Have a great night.